Hello everyone. I welcome you all in our webinar series on networking, communication and soft skills, third episode on diversity in communication with our speaker Rajnarind Kaur. So before we get started the session, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. So here is a small video about PCC.
Punjabi Chamber was formed to unite the global Indian Punjabi community.
Just having access to professionals across the world on a more professional as well as a personal note is the biggest value that I have seen in PCC.
It brings all Punjabi brothers together and gives all the business people a bigger and a better platform.
Privileged to have this opportunity to mentor the younger generation coming into the business world.
I'm really excited to use the Mentor Connect program offered by the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce.
Yes. So Punjabi Chamber of Commerce is a non-profit organization established in 2017 and headquartered in USA. The organization envisions to facilitate global and local business communities with a networking forum wherein they can build new connections and relationships. Our network is committed to build an ecosystem for informative mentorship and advocacy programs. We have strict no religious, no politics policy in our place, and we believe in diversity and inclusion. Yes, here is the positioning and ethos, or we can say core mantra of PCC. These are capital building, capacity building, and community building. Capital building through commerce and cooperation, capacity building through community and communications, community building through culture and creativity. So Global Youth Squad, GYS, is our youth wing. The main objective is to create the legacy for the next generation to grow, build, and succeed. Its main envisions also to facilitate youth generation with a global platform wherein they can access mentorship programs and professional training sessions. Punjabi Chamber Foundation, PCF, is our charitable arm. We have raised some funds during the COVID pandemic, and we have already set up an oxygen plant in Manali in partnership with Rotary International. So here is the guest speaker, Rajnarind Kaur. She is born and raised in the United States, and she is the founder of Rutgers University Sikh Students Association. Being the founding principal of Art of Speaking, she empowers individuals to confidently develop their leadership, analytical, and public speaking skills. She has also received international awards for her voiceover work in various films, including PBS documentary Walking into the Unknown, Punjabi Without Walls, and the ever popular Bani Pro 1 and Pro 2. We welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to kindly take the session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
You can all see it? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I would like to begin by thanking the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity and forum to really represent Art of Speaking in this course workshop to the Global Youth Squad. I will, of course, call out Indi Samra and Robandeep Gorsani for their persistence in requesting me to present, so thank you. So in today's session, we're going to cover the lessons learned from Indi's seminar last Friday on networking and really analyze the survey results that were sent out just to get an assessment of the audience that we're talking to today. I will then delve a little bit deeper into the various modes of listening and then discuss communication styles as well as inter-cross-cultural communication, leaving you all with a bit of application and homework exercises so that you can practice what you learned in today's seminar. So Indi's session was on networking and communication. I will recap some of the items that I noted as key messages that I took away. So the first being the difference between networking and communication. I would say networking is building those relationships and then using communication, the dialogue, to actually establish your unique value and then establish trust with the individuals that you're speaking with. He then went on to explain the professional and personal brand. What do others think of you? What are you known for? What are you an expert in? What are your strengths? We all have a unique value. And knowing what your unique value is really the key to creating your brand, both personally as well as professionally. Indi provided his brand of integrity, known as Honest Indi, as his example. As a Sikh, we all have a unique identity. And Dr. Seuss has this amazing quote, which I use all the time. Why fit in when you were born to stand out? Be yourself and don't surround yourself with people who act like you, look like you, think like you. Diversity is key in this global environment. And bouncing ideas off of several individuals in several different communities really expands the ideas and expands your reach so that you're able to even expand your business on top of that. Having been the only Sikh growing up in my school, I will say, and one of the few Punjabis as well within school, I will say I'm stronger for it. It really built my character. So we're all very quick to judge, and it's very easy to do. But in Gurbani, we always say, who are we to call someone who is good or bad? Public speaking is a very soft skill that is quite critical in today's society. You should be able to essentially sell ice to the Eskimos. What I mean by that is confidently communicate your message in a very clear and succinct manner. Hearing the details of someone as they're speaking and then paraphrasing them, recalling them, is the difference between active and passive listening. And we'll go into that a little bit more within this session today. The SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic or relevant, and timely. These goals are something within corporate America, or corporate, I guess, or all organizations now, they look to really measure your progress. So for example, within the networking concept, a mentor once told me I need to network 365 days a year. I said, I don't think I can do that, but I'll take a SMART goal from that, and maybe I will massage that SMART goal into being, I will network once a week within my LinkedIn community through Zoom, virtual coffees, phone, email, text, to have that networking aspect, but I can't do it 365 days a year. The last is really practice. And you all know how you study best. As many of you are still in school or just starting in your career, you know how you studied, whether it's cramming right before the exam or the consistent daily or weekly review of everything. Using technology to your advantage, whether it being simulating a Zoom session, seeing how you're appearing, how you're looking, using the audio, seeing how you're sounding when you're speaking. Practice is the key, whether it's scripted or bulleted, as in Indy's case. I believe the takeaway here is to practice. You only get better, and you actually do it if you do it. You actually can practice if you do it loudly, not just in your mind. Remember to exude the energy, and through Zoom it is difficult. In person it's a little bit easier. Modulate your voice for the variety, and really connect with your audience. The key is to practice and not to wing it. So I was able to, again, have the opportunity to send out that pre-session feedback to really understand and collate, compile, and analyze the results. Over 30 individuals responded, and I believe there are definitely questions for communication and room for improvement, which we'll speak about, as well as expanding your network. But given the about 45 minutes or minutes that we have today, I will do my best to kind of go through what I can, but I'm more than willing to drill down to focus topics if interested later on. Again, as I mentioned, as many of you are either still studying or 1 or 2 years out of your schooling and you're just starting your career, you did note that your communication skills were quite average, which is nice, but it's subjective to who you're comparing yourself to, as well as the diversity in your network. Something to note is that if we're all average, there is room for improvement. There is also room for expansion. So that's what I would like you to keep in mind today. So again, today we're going to focus on 3 things. The first session laid the foundation for, and then we're going to just delve a little bit deeper. So the different modes of listening, the diversity in communication across cultures, and then the application of these concepts to you as an individual. So I discussed earlier the difference between active and passive listening. I find that this Peanuts cartoon captures it quite aptly. I'll read it out. It says, "So what do you think?" Lucy says. And Charlie says, "What difference does it make? You never listen anyway." "Well, I was just making conversation." When you make conversation, you do have to listen to. And her question is, you really do? So I'll make a point here that when we sent out the pre-session survey, many of you may not have actually read that it was a pre-session survey. So some of the comments and questions that I received back was, "Oh, great session. Excellent speaker. Thank you so much for coordinating." This was a pre-session survey. Hopefully we'll send out a post one as well. But the difference here is the active and passive being present, listening to those individuals. And as Indy mentioned before, the networking. If you're able to recall a client's name or the children's birthdays or a special event that happens in their lives, you will bag that client in essence, right? You have made that connection. You've taken that extra step to really recall certain details and then relate it back to them when they probably may not know that you were actually hearing. So I guess for me, one of the tests that you can do today is if you are able to take one message from today's presentation, I'll commend you that you were actively listening. you can cheat, I guess, because it is recorded, so you can go back and listen to it later. But try and do it, and you just take 1 or 2 tidbits away when you're talking to individuals, and you'll see the active listening is really, it is difficult to do because our mind wanders, and that's something that we have to train our mind to do. So really try and actively listen to those individuals that you're speaking with. Now here, diversity means pretty much all the ways in which we differ. While we all may be Punjabi, we're all in different parts of the world. We have different experiences. So in this iceberg, I really like to use this one in that it shows above the line, above the waterline, it shows the readily visible differences. But there's so many underlying differences that you may not be able to see at the surface. And again here, diversity is shown through these visuals, but you also can understand it and feel it when you're speaking to people. So here's another iceberg depiction, I guess you can say. This is really talking about the various communication styles across different regions. So I have written here APAC, which is Asia Pacific, EMEA, which is the Europe, Middle East, and Africa section of the world, and then the Americas. I'll give a couple of quick stories here. I was in Paris, and I've had the opportunity, been very fortunate to travel for work. And one of the times I was in Paris, one of the things that I had researched, understood about the French is that they're not too keen on English. So I learned a couple of catchphrases and tried to communicate with them. I couldn't learn all of French within the time frame, but I learned parlez-vous anglais. When I would initiate a conversation with just parlez-vous anglais, which is can you speak English, they would open up and go further than meeting me halfway because I at least tried their language. I tried that little bit. Another thing that I realized for Latin America was I knew Spanish, but I didn't know Portuguese, but little did I know that they're actually very different. I went down to Brazil and started speaking in Spanish. Had to end up playing charades, but was still able to communicate. Some of the tips I'll talk about later on in the session will, I think, really express what you need to do when talking to individuals from other countries. Again, while we all may be Punjabis, we're all in different parts of the world, and our experiences really come into play in how we understand the idioms that are being used or the slang that's being used. So here, the intercultural communication can be difficult, and that's where the slang and the idioms come into play. Many times I've come across here in the States, we say 6.5 dozen of another. Many parts of the world don't understand that means half 6, it means half of a dozen. But when we say it so off the cuff that we expect everyone to understand it. Again, I've traveled and I've understood that speaking slowly makes a world of a difference. If you speak slow enough and actively listen again, you'll be able to communicate in a manner that you're able to communicate, express your message. It may not be as succinct as you would, let's say, doing a presentation, but at least you'll have that conversation. And again, going back to the networking and establishing and building the relationship, you'll be able to find the commonality so that you can be flexible and go according to how they're running the conversation. You don't always have to run the conversation. Okay? Now, I'm going to pause because I do want to take some questions. I saw some hands being raised, and I'm hoping someone's going to help me with this. Are there any questions at this point before we go to some of the I guess, the homework that I was hoping to do, but given the number of people on the call, I'm not sure if we can do. So we can ask for volunteers, but I want to first take any questions. Are there any questions?
No, not right now.
Yeah, no. Okay, excellent. All right, so then now it's really the applicability of taking the concepts that I talked about today and trying it out on your own You can try it out if anyone's brave enough to do it today. I will give the examples to kind of frame it and structure it for you so that you can actually take away something from today's session and not just hear it, really apply it to your world. Okay, so the first one is about 1 to 2 minutes, and this is a simple exercise of just introducing yourself. And we do this all the time. I know many of you, as you're starting your careers, you're meeting new groups of people, you're in meetings, and you have to introduce yourself. This is a quick introduction of who you are, where you're working at, what is your brief summary, and what are you strong at, which could relate back to the pre-session survey question or what I spoke about earlier, which was the unique value. I would like you all to just kind of think about it. While you're thinking about it, I'll give you my example. So hi, my name is Rajnarind Kaur. I currently am an adjunct professor at the business school. My entire career has been on Wall Street as a global program manager in the States, Europe, and Latin America. My network is vast, diverse, and quite amazing. One of the things I guess I'm particularly strong at is that I am able to understand the overall vision of a project or some deliverable or a goal in mind and really break it down into manageable steps, into those smart goals that you reach in order to get to the action-oriented, the timely implementation and execution of that. So that is my introduction. But as you guys have always done this, the second part of this exercise is really to do the reflection. And this is where technology comes into play, or your friends, your family really can help you with this. The time to take that 1 to 2 minutes and express your introduction, take another 2 minutes to understand how you sounded. How did you appear? Were you confident and comfortable in what you were saying? And were your statements clear and concise? Again, we go back to something I mentioned earlier, is do you wing it or do you actually practice it and script it? You can script it with sentences, you could script it with bullets, but the essence is to practice. When you practice it and you actually hear it out loud, you will reduce the filler words of like, so that it comes across more confidently. Does anybody want to try? I see stuff in the chat.
We have one question, Rajnarind.
Okay.
So the question is by Rimpi, how to know if the other person is interested in conversation or not?
That's an interesting question. If in person, body language will play a huge role. If the person is looking around and definitely not with you in the conversation, you can tell that they probably don't want to have the conversation. But if they're actively listening, they're acknowledging, they're making eye contact, that shows that they do want to be engaged in the conversation. And if they're asking questions, I think as well.
I hope it answers your question, Rimpi.
I see one in the chat. It says, in order to communicate faster, we tend to make mistakes. Is it really necessary to speak faster? That's from Kushbu. I personally don't think you should speak faster. I think you should use the pauses effectively, right? So we're very scared of silence. If you actually use the silence to your advantage, you're able to articulate your message in a more clear manner because you've given the time for the individual to understand, relate, digest what you're saying. And I've over exaggerated in that sentence, but I was trying to make a point. If I was going this fast, you're not really hearing, it's very hard to actively listen. But if I slow it down and pause effectively, allowing you to understand the concept of silence and using it to your advantage, then you're able to digest it easier. I don't know if that was effective or not, but I wouldn't say speak faster, especially cross-cultural communication, go slower. Sorry? Are there more questions? Or we're good? Okay, I think we're good. So I'm going to go to the next exercise if there's no one that wants to try. And we can go back. Let me introduce the second exercise and see if this one maybe you'd want to do. So this one is...
So, Rajnarind, there is one question by Indy. So, have you always been so well spoken and proficient in your communication?
Indy.
It's a compliment.
Coming from you, Indy, quite the compliment with your British accent. It takes work, it takes practice. Again, I always go back to you should be able to sell ice to the Eskimos. So if you're able to, and what I mean again by that, and that may be a slang here, Eskimos have ice. It's not a product that they need. But if I'm able to persuade them to buy ice, to spend their hard-earned money to buy ice from me, then I'm successful in my pitching or in my selling. Takes practice. I think everybody can do it if you're willing and ready to put in the time and the effort. That uddam is needed, right? You have to put in the effort in order to reap the rewards.
Okay, so the next question is by Khushbu. How did you started diversifying your network? Basically, the first step you took in communication, which lead the way to present.
That's a good question. I think that came up in the pre-session survey as well. So the network diversification is something that I have actively worked on whenever I travel. I immediately try and connect with the individuals and then link into them. Most of my network, I keep my LinkedIn network open, so it's open to anybody who's connected to me. I don't close them because most of the people in my network are like me. They want to help. You can always reach out to them and they will expand your horizons, expand your network, and allow you those collaboration opportunities. If you think about it, you're in school and you've finished 4 years. Do you remember your professor from freshman year, from the first year? We tend to forget names. So the one thing that I found is the LinkedIn app is quite useful and quite powerful in the sense that I may forget people's names, but if I link into them at that time, then at least they're in my network and I can always do searches on them later to retrieve them if and when I need to. The other thing is that Wall Street is the finance world is very small and people move around a lot. So they may not be at the same company for a longer period of time. So I may lose track of them, but if and when I'm like looking for another job and I want to go to another firm, I can search in the app through that firm and then find all the contacts that I know. So to me, it's really actively, again, connecting to individuals, whether it's, and sometimes it's that personal message. You don't have to use the default message. It could be like, even for today, if I see the names and I link into people, I'll be like, oh, thank you so much for joining today's session, and I'll link into you. Or please feel free to do the same for me. Oh, it was a nice session. I learned something from you. Here's my actively listening portion that I learned from you today, or something like that. So that then there's the feedback, there's a relationship, and there is a commonality that I know where you're coming from. Sometimes people will take my network connections and reach out to them by dropping my name, so that then there's the commonality. So it's really, again, actively putting in the effort to expand the network if that's where you want to go. If you're interested in a firm, if you're interested in a country that you want to do a little bit of travel to or research in or work in, you start connecting to those individuals, and then you'll start getting into that world, which will then be easier when you want to apply for a job. You already have connections there.
Okay, so yeah, we have one more question by Khushbu again. So there is always a gap between what we practice and what we actually communicate. So how to fill that gap?
I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, if you script out your presentation and you're not saying it or communicating it in exactly the same way, you can get tripped up. I think that's where you're going. I think there's, again, everybody's different and everybody's unique in this. But if you script out your presentation and then you skip portions of it when you're actually presenting, it's okay. No one's going to know that you missed out certain things. If you show and then you backtrack and you say something that, oh, I forgot to say this, then obviously everybody will know. If you don't script it out, and let's say you bullet it, and there's a bullet that you missed, it's okay. Don't get fumbled and flustered during the presentation, because then that shows. It shakes your confidence, right? Maintain, go with the flow. Whatever's happening, the way that I think about it is everything happens in hukum. So whatever's happening happens, go with the flow, go along with it, and then you can always go back and say something if you remember it later, but don't make a big deal about it in the presentation. I hope that answers that, Khushbu. I wasn't sure if I understood the question.
Yeah, she's saying great, perfect.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm gonna share now this next exercise. So the first one was the introduction. The second one is the elevator pitch. Now this is so critical in today's world. I find the elevator pitch is essential depending on what you're trying to achieve. So knowing your audience is really key here. I think if you're pitching a business or you're pitching a product, you're pitching yourself, or if you're just introducing yourself, giving your services, this is where the elevator pitch would come into play. Whereas the introduction is more giving a background of who you are and what you can bring to the table, let's say in a meeting or in a work setting. So this is really being able to succinctly communicate your message, knowing your audience in that effective manner and style. So I'm going to give the example, and I will structure it that I'll give it to the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, the Global Youth Squad. So I will start, and hopefully this will resonate with you and you'll be able to kind of walk away and structure your own elevator pitch. So my name is Rajnarind Kaur, and I am passionate about having an impact and making a difference. I have my executive MBA from NYU Stern Business School, focusing on strategy, finance, and leadership. I was born and raised in the States. I do identify as a Sikh and a Punjabi. So my reaction to today's workshop is one of gratitude for giving me the opportunity, the engagement, as well as the network. You've increased my network exponentially as well. So I thank you, and that's my elevator pitch. In that, what I will ask you all to do, and obviously this is recorded, you can take notes, you can see, it's a very simple kind of couple of things that you want to get across. Put the structure in place and how you want to deliver your elevator pitch and your introduction, and then practice it. And what I mean by practicing, again, is ask your friends, your peers, your family to do in person. Before that, just doing it in front of the mirror or recording yourself on your phone. Or if you want to even try that, let's say you have a Zoom interview coming up, do a simulated Zoom session with yourself and see how you're appearing in the camera. Are you making the eye contact in that little hole where the camera is, or are you looking down? Are you looking at the people? That makes a difference. That confidence over Zoom will be shown through that eye contact, the simulated eye contact. So I would ask you all to practice that if that's an area that you feel is maybe an improvement area for yourself. Okay, and then this is it. I mean, we're coming to the end here. I'll conclude here, and I welcome any and all questions, providing you my contact information. Please keep in touch. Please connect with me. If there's any questions or anything that I can help with, please ask. I'm totally open to helping out wherever I can. Thank you.
All right, so yeah. So the Khushbu is saying elevator pitch is really helpful, amazing. I can see myself making a really impactful introduction. So don't you ever think while communicating that what other people might think about you?
I don't. I have to be confident in what I'm saying. If I start worrying about what other people are going to think of me, then I think my mind starts playing games, right? Then you start thinking more about what other people are thinking about you than what you're trying to get across. In your communication, I think 80% of it is delivery. It's not really the content. So if you're coming across as confident, again, it's the actively listening part. If they're passively listening and you're coming across confident, you're good. If they're actively listening to your content, obviously have your content, know your subject matter, but I don't think you should worry about what other people think about you.
Put yourself on mute, everyone. Rajnarind Kaur, could you please put yourself on mute? If anybody can help us. Aarti. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So So Meher has a question. Does mirroring the person in a conversation is helpful?
It can be. I've done that, where you pretend that you're the other person as well, so you're basically having a conversation with yourself. I would do that behind closed doors, so no one thinks you're kind of a little insane there. But I think it is helpful so that you can anticipate the questions and it allows you to think. In essence, what I would do would be obviously have your questions and have your answers already in your mind, but it allows you to, again, practice how you're going to deliver it, the message back or the answers. So if I was to say, let's just take this question. If I was practicing for this session and one of the questions that came through in the pre-session was, does it help to mirror the person you're speaking with? I'd be like, hi, how are you? Oh, I have a question for you. Does it help in mirroring the person you're speaking to? I'll pause and I'll say, thank you so much for that question, so that my mind is able to compile a very concise, succinct answer and I'm not fumbling for words. And then I'll say, I believe it does help to mirror, so that then you have that flow of the conversation. Well, the chat's kind of...
There is one more question. So it is by Priyanka Sharma. Sometimes we forget a particular word or not able to get that word. So how to overcome that situation?
So I did it a few times in the presentation today. You can use a synonym. You may want to use a more a sophisticated word, and at the time you kind of blank out, then just go to the more simple word. Sometimes simplicity is better. If you forget the word and you can't think of a synonym, I would not apologize. I would pause, restate the sentence, and try it again. And then it should come to you. But if you apologize, you're drawing attention to the fact that you've forgotten a word, and then the person you're speaking to may come under the impression that the language that you're speaking in may not be your first language. So you may want to not draw the attention to it, restart the question, and then answer it again, or restart that sentence and say it again. But practice will alleviate all of that if you actually put in the time to practice. The 1 to 2 minutes for an introduction or the 1 to 2 minutes for your elevator pitch, you will not come across that scenario of you forgetting a particular word if you've practiced.
Okay. So one more question by Dr. Chabra. So it is like, we often wonder what we say is not as important to how we say. So can you explain why is it so?
So I'm going to bring that question up because I didn't understand it. What we say is not as important in how we say it. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is the delivery versus the presentation again. It's because of that. It's because of that active versus passive listening of the audience. This is how I will explain it. Or even in school, when you're listening to a professor for an hour and 20 minutes. When my students listen to me for an hour and 20 minutes, Their attention span is maybe there for 15 minutes or half an hour. So within that time, I really need to get my points across. But I reiterate, I restate, I'll say it in a different way so that at least the message that I want to get in that lesson, they're able to walk away in some shape or form. Because the mind wanders, right? It's that man chanchalega, right? We go at, it goes here and there and we're not able to focus it. So it's training that mind into really actively listening and taking notes. If you're an individual that needs to actively take notes so that you're able to recall and take in what you're hearing, that will help you. If you're not and we're all different learners, right? There's visual learner, auditory learner. There are all these different types of learners. You have to know yourself and know how you best learn. If, going back to the question, if the delivery, the content may be superb, right? It may be an amazing, knowledgeable subject matter that everybody wants to hear about. But if the delivery of the person who's delivering is very kind of hesitant or not confident or in a monologue in the same kind of tone, you either will fall asleep, your mind will wander, you're not really interested anymore, and it will turn you off from this incredible subject that you may have wanted to know more about. So it is always in the delivery. So when you're delivering, make sure that you're getting all that you can in your presentation to make the content really sink into the individuals. And I see, you know, from the chat, people are writing what they learned today, which is great, because then at least you got that one message, you got something taken out of this session today, which then makes it all worthwhile for me, because I'm able to at least get some points across. And it's not many, it was just 3 objectives that we had in mind. And if you recall the 3 objectives, you get a bonus point.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, this was the main motive. So yeah, again, there is a question from Khushbu. I believe Khushbu has many questions. So,
Well, I thank you, Khushbu.
It's more related to body language actually. So she's asking, while communicating to your audience, does walking make a difference, or like hand gestures and everything? If yes, then how?
Absolutely, I think it does. In person, I will use the space. In the picture that's shown on the presentation, I'm definitely, I use my hands when I speak, and I walk. In class when I'm teaching, because of the way the classroom is situated, I'm not able to actually walk, but I definitely still use my hands. In Zoom, if you notice, my slides were animated. That's to keep you guys engaged, to give you that sense of movement. I think it engages the audience in the sense that they're not just looking in one place and their eyes are getting heavy and they start falling asleep. So when you use the space, you use the stage to your advantage, you're able to engage your audience a little bit better.
So we have one more question. So it is related to practice, and I believe that this is something I can relate to. So Rama is asking how we can make the practice more interesting. Like, we all know that practice is most important, but sometimes we are not in a mood to practice. But how to build that habit actually?
I think it's getting your audience. If you have, like, my kids love listening and giving me feedback, and I welcome the feedback from them. So this is an opportunity for my boys to give their mother feedback, right? How many times do they get a chance to do that? They can tell me what I did wrong, what I did right, and I make it fun. So I'll be like, okay, listen to my presentation. So they sat, they heard my presentation, and they gave me feedback. They said, don't say that, say this. So make it fun for your audience as well. Maybe, you know, take them out for coffee or something. For yourself to do it, I think to make yourself motivated to do it is, maybe this goes back to the question that was previously asked, is what will others think of you? It's your brand, your reputation that's online. So if I didn't practice for today's session, I'm putting myself out there and I could fall flat on my face, which is then my brand, my reputation. I wouldn't want to give that impression to anyone. So then if you are concerned with that question, or that is something, and maybe I answered it too quickly last time, right? I do think about it, and I would think about it pre my presentation in order to prepare for it. So I want to come across in a very professional manner, and I'm able to get my points across. So that should be the driver. Then using your family, using your friends, using your peers, using your mentors who would love to give back and give feedback back to you guys. I'm sure that that would be interesting for them to hear and then people feel honored that you're trusting them with your kind of practice to them beforehand, and then they're able to help you out, and then you can, you know, reward them in some way, take them out to lunch or dinner or something.
So true. So one more question. It is by Nimandip sir. So while communicating, convincing is more important or conveying the message? What is your experience as a professor? He wants to know.
Yeah. So as a professor, I'm not trying to sell them or convince them of anything. I welcome them to have their own mind. I'm explaining the concept, and then for them to apply the concept to themselves. So for me, it's really conveying the message or the course, the material that I'm trying to teach. It's not to convince them to do anything. Now, if I'm working as in a nonprofit, which I am on the board of, it is definitely something that I need to convince people to give me money in order for us to do what we need to do to serve the community. So that message is completely different than me as a professor. So I think, again, knowing your audience, the persuasive, the negotiation skills, the influencing tactics, all of that will come into play depending on what you're trying to do in whatever presentation, and knowing your audience. We're not just these binary individuals working in these limitations of this is my role. I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a I don't know, a nonprofit board member, I'm a professor, I'm a corporate employee. So there's so many different vast personalities to us that I definitely don't communicate in the same way to all audiences.
Great. Even I had one question, but before that, Khushbu again is posting her question. So yeah, so I always try to take the opportunities where I can build my confidence in front of a large number of people. For example, like participating in debates or speaking, etc. But is that the only way to build your confidence? She's asking.
No, I don't think so. I think that it definitely helps if you're taking advantage and going out of your comfort zone to participate in these debates and speeches. But sometimes if they're competitive, maybe you can get caught up in that, and maybe that's not the area that you really want to hone in on. I would say put yourself out there, but in different situations. Whether it be running a lunch and learn or just speaking on something that you've learned recently within class, and then you want to kind of bring to your fellow peers at work. Maybe you learned something, you know, in your studies that you can then bring, and it's nothing formal. It can be a very casual thing. The other is volunteering for certain events or certain projects, whether at work or outside of work. Those leadership opportunities are there's so many, and putting yourself into those situations, you have to communicate, you have to lead, you have to manage individuals, which will then build your confidence and getting you into more of not formal presentations, but it's the style that you can then develop and how you want to lead.
Indeed. So I have a question. So the question is like in the pre-survey, we have a question like how to find your unique value. So if you could give your insight on that, like sometimes I had the same question in last session also, like if we feel that we have so many skills, that how can we highlight only one skill, that what is our unique value? So how to be more clear about that?
So in business school, I teach something called the SWOT analysis. I think Nimandeep actually mentioned it as well. So that's where you really identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. I ask my students to do a SWOT analysis on themselves. Okay, so if you have not done it, I would ask you all to do it. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. When you do that, you will be amazed at your strengths. Don't be judgmental in your response to what you've written down, but also don't be general, right? So many of in the pre-session survey, some people had written, I'm a good listener, or I work hard. Those are very general. But when you're able to spin the story in that I listen very well, in that I remember my clients' names, their spouses' names, and the birthdays of their children, that tells me that you're actually putting it into practice. That's your unique value, that you remember things. Some people can take it and apply it to something else. Let's say their unique value is when you said I'm a hard worker. That's great. That's very general. But if you're a hard worker when it comes to something that you know already, so you're just robotic, or are you a hard worker in that you're actively, eagerly wanting to learn something new, and then you work hard to achieve almost perfection in that? In the way that you articulate your strength is your unique value. But the thing there is, everyone has a unique value, and everyone has to be able to tell their unique value in their own words. So when I ask my students again to tell me their unique value, it starts off as very generic. Then I interview each and every one of my students to really bring out their unique value. And then when they walk away, they have their story, they have their unique value, and they know what they can bring to the table. And they also know what they need to learn, like the areas of improvement of what they can kind of work on in the next few years.
I believe that this is something very crucial, because I usually meet many people, and they usually say that we don't feel that we have any unique value. Even I believe that everybody has something in them, but they don't believe sometimes. So yes, we should practice in order to find something unique in us. So we have one more question by Dr. Kumar. So do you think we should have diversity in communication to be taught at school education level?
I think diversity in communication can be taught. It really depends on the aspects of it. I touched upon a very high level. There's a whole course beneath this that, I mean, there's so many different aspects, and it can be specific to a certain region of the world. So I'll give the example here, because I find examples really kind of bring it home. I was asked to conduct a workshop globally for a company. They broke it up into 3 sections, which is according to the world, time zone wise. I did India and APAC region together. Then I did Africa and Europe together. And then I did all of America and Canada and Latin America together. While the essence of the presentation stayed the same, my delivery of it changed dramatically when I taught each of the regions. And what I mean by that is I asked for a pre-session feedback similar to what I did here for the APAC region, because many individuals, in my experience being in China or being in those areas, is that they're not as comfortable speaking up and raising their hand and kind of interrupting the presentation to ask their questions. So I asked for questions or what their expectations were beforehand so that I could address it. When I taught the Americas, I didn't have to do that, because Americans and Canadians somewhat were more than willing to interrupt me at any point in time. And I would actually build in the brief pauses, similar to what I did with today's session earlier on, to kind of address any questions rather than wait to the end. So I think it can be taught. It really depends on how the course is developed and where they focus it. I taught global management before, and it was really based on stereotypes, which I didn't like. Because I don't think that the way you teach diversity is through stereotypes. I think it's through application and practice of it.
Okay, so we have one more question. So it is by Akash. Okay, so is SWOT analysis similar to competency mapping?
It is, yeah, somewhat. In competency mapping, you're really looking at all your strengths, let's say. You're not looking at those threats and opportunities which the SWOT analysis brings into play, right? That's why I think the SWOT analysis is nice. You can do a SWOT analysis on a company, you can do a SWOT analysis on an individual, you can do it on even a university. Whereas competency mapping can also be done in a company, but not to the same effect, because you're looking at the opportunities and threats. And I'm repeating that again, because that really gives a different perspective that you can't see in the competency mapping. I'll give you the example. Again, if I look at a student, an individual, and I look at their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities and threats. Okay, so let's do a youth, someone who just graduated. Their strength is that they are eager to learn, they are graduating, and they're ready to start their career. So they have the drive, the energy, the time commitment, the focus. The weakness would be maybe they don't obviously have that experience. Maybe they don't have the network yet. The opportunity is to really grow that network, given that they're graduating, plus they'll have a job in hand, so they can exponentially grow their network if they're actively building those relationships, establishing their trust, introducing themselves, providing their elevator pitch so that then they have those relationships, they have that network then built. The threat, though, are all the other individuals who are at the same level, who are coming in and doing the exact same thing. So how are they going to stand out? We go back to Dr. Seuss's quote. How are you going to stand out? You're going to stand out by what? By what action? By what aspect? What are you going to do to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack? Everybody's different, and you have to identify it. Whether it be, I'll say, looking at the screen, I only see Robindeep, but her smile is infectious, right? So that is something that over Zoom works for her. And it's great. And I'm like, oh, I just want to give her a hug. So I think that really kind of comes across whether in person or Zoom, and you kind of get your personality out there. Not everybody is as comfortable doing something like that.
First of all, thank you. I wish I could hug you, but we are at different places. So
virtual.
So yeah, so we have one more question, ma'am. So it is again by Khushbu. So I've seen that foreign people have a really good confidence while speaking. So they are very clear about their thoughts while speaking. So what do you think about that? Like, is that natural in them or they do practice?
So by foreign people, I'm assuming not India. And I don't think I think it's everywhere. So I have the opportunity. I disagree somewhat with that statement, just because I'm in a position right now. One, I'm born and raised in the States. Two, I have clients across the world. I'm international, and I don't see that everyone's confident in their speaking. Also in America, my students are not confident. All of them are not confident in speaking and understanding and being able to get their thoughts across. It is practice. It's putting themselves in those positions if that's something that they want to improve. If you know that it's an area of improvement for you, but you don't want to do anything about it, you're not going to get better. And then they tend to shy away from those opportunities because it's not something that they want to focus on. And again, everyone is on their own journey, and everyone has their choices to make. If they know that they don't present well and they don't want to work on it, they will choose a career that they don't have to really do something like that. But I wouldn't say a blanket statement across that all foreign people are confident in their speaking. They're not. They work on it. We have so many here in the States. We have so many opportunities, so many classes, so many things going on that you can that are available. And I'm sure in India as well, there's something called Toastmasters International. I know in India they have chapters, and people actively go to these meetings and actually practice presenting. So I would urge you all to go to Toastmasters, find one that's local in your area, and become a member and practice. They go through a whole curriculum of different types of speeches and how you can practice and get better if that's something that you want to focus on.
Yeah, this is true. Just to add in the same, I believe that by joining hands with different organizations is also a good idea. For example, like we are having Youth Squad here, so we usually meet different people like from different countries. So we get the chance to communicate with each other, and that's how we improve a lot. So, like, would you suggest these kinds of organization to join?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anything to put yourself in a position where you can expand your reach and practice again, if that's something that you want to do, putting yourself in those circumstances definitely will help in anything. Also, your own interests, knowing what you want to do, and then actively following your passion, that will ultimately, absolutely, actually, provide you that avenue to really get hyped up, to want to learn more, to then be able to teach others, right? Let's say you're really into knitting, and there's a knitting club, and then you start going to the knitting club, and then you start talking, and then there are people who like certain books, and then you start a book club. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. It's really follow your passion. I mean, I always talk about following your passion. Don't get stuck doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, indeed. So yes, so I think so. We don't have any question, but we have so many thank yous that you have really provided value to the community. So yes, so Khushbu is saying that through GYS, she has learned so many things like networking, communication, so many skills. And okay, thank you, Khushbu.
I just want to say one thing. I think I noticed something in here. I'm trying to find it. But the one thing is consciously, I don't know what the question was actually, but it was something to the effect of that we know what we're supposed to do, but it's very hard to actually do it. It goes back to that practice one, right? How do you motivate yourself, or what's the drive to really kind of pursue? And that's the difference between execution and the idea, right? The ideation process stays in your mind and nothing happens. If you're able to focus yourself and actually execute, that's what's going to stand you apart. That could be your unique value, right? If you're able to know, and you give the example, I noticed that I need to improve on my presentation. So I actively enrolled in a Toastmasters club, and I went out and practiced for 10 weeks, right? It'll show your interviewer that you're focused, you're motivated, you're driven, and you're able to utilize the tools that you have available to you, right? That you're not going to sit and wait to be told. There's so many things, so many skills that can come out of that, especially when you're interviewing. Those stories that you're able to tell about your experience will really set you apart, rather than just being generic in that, oh, I don't know, I can present well, or something like that.
Indeed. So I think so. We don't have any question. Okay, so there's one question again. Okay. Okay, Toastmaster is.
Toastmasters International. Yeah, if you can probably Google it. I know if you saw my Art of Speaking handle, I have a connect in there as well for the international one, and you can kind of find it from there. They definitely have sessions globally, anywhere in the world.
Thank you, Rajnarind ji. So I don't think so. We have any question left. So we are about to wind up, everyone. So if there is any question, you can please post it down.
If not, I'm totally available afterwards, guys. I thank you so much for the opportunity again, and please keep in touch.
Okay, so everybody is saying thank you, Rajnarind ma'am, for connecting and sharing so many valuable things to us. So, okay, so with this, we come to an end. It was really an amazing session. So thank you, Rajnarind ji, from the bottom of our heart for sparing your valuable time with us. We really have great insights from this session, but what I believe, what was the most important one, that was the practice. Like you emphasize most upon the practice part, that before doing anything, we should practice. We can either do it through record ourselves, or through video recording, or through Zoom recording. Practice could be in any way, but we should practice. That's how we learn actually. So I once again thank you, and I express my gratitude towards each and everyone present here. Thank you for joining in, and we would love to have you in our upcoming sessions also. And with this, I request the team to close the session. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.